China and Australia are locked in a war of words, and some fear the major trading partners are heading on a collision course. The relationship hit a new low after Australia led calls for an investigation into the origins of the coronavirus.
中方已经多次就澳方推动搞所谓疫情独立国际审议阐明立场，我们坚决反对对疫情进行政治操弄。事实证明，这种做法不合时宜，不得人心，是不会得逞的。
Hu Xijin, editor of the state-run Global Times, referred to Australia as
a bit like chewing gum stuck on the sole of China's shoes. Sometimes you have to find a stone to rub it off.
Then the rhetoric turned into trade threats. The Chinese ambassador to Australia called for a boycott of Australian products and universities. And the Chinese government announced it would ban some major Australian meat exporters and impose hefty tariffs on Australian barley imports. Are these retaliatory moves for instigating the coronavirus probe? Beijing says no, but the timing of it is raising eyebrows in Canberra.
It's been an ongoing issue between our two countries, and we have seen the level of trade of barley into China fall from 1.7 billion down to 600 million. So I think it would be. I think we have to be careful not to draw lines between these two things. We would expect and hope that this issue will be determined on its merits.
The reality is there's plenty at stake for both sides who are economically bound. China makes up about 30% of Australia's trade revenue, and China sources its iron ore from down under. But its ability to navigate its trading interests is being put to the ultimate test by its allegiance to longtime security ally Washington. Australia looks like the meat between an increasingly hostile sandwich. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo has this warning for Australia over its potential Belt and Road deal with China.
We will simply disconnect. We will simply separate.
While one Chinese state media report said,
once Australia is regarded as a supporter of the US in a new Cold War, China-Australia economic ties will inevitably suffer a fatal blow.
Australia and the US have shown a united front against China on a number of issues, including Chinese military expansion in the South China Sea, the exclusion of tech giant Huawei from its 5G networks, and condemnation of alleged human rights abuses. China sees Australia's front-running of the coronavirus probe as another example of its ideological prejudice in favour of the US, and claims the inquiry is being engineered by Washington. But anti-Chinese sentiment in Australia has been brewing for some time, even manifesting in racist attacks on campus. Australia claims that Beijing is meddling in its domestic affairs through political donations and influencing universities. Then there's the curious case of Wang Liqiang, who told Australian media he had been operating as a spy for Beijing. The alleged defector offered up a trove of information to Australian intelligence officials detailing how
Beijing covertly controls listed companies to fund intelligence operations, including the surveillance and profiling of dissidents.
Chinese police said the so-called spy was a convicted con artist from Fujian. A swindler or a spy, Wang Liqiang's claims added to a growing tide of distrust on both sides. But with the rhetoric intensifying, the question now is whether they can regain that trust before a full-scale trade war breaks out.